Hello, my name is Sascha Mehlheiser, and I have the pleasure of presenting to you our new Atlas Visitor Center, which is opening up this year. We already had a visitor center for a bit more than 10 years, but recently decided to do a complete rehaul, and I had the pleasure of managing that and implementing that together with a few people from the Atlas collaboration and the CERN education and outreach team. So we have basically taken out the old exhibition, redesigned the existing space, and put in some new nice features that I'm going to talk about in the next couple of minutes. Tours to the Atlas Visitor Center are always guided tours. So it's not an open exhibition room, it's always a guide, so a person working at CERN or even the Atlas experiment that will give a group of 12 to 24 people a tour under regular conditions, a tour through our little new exhibition. So how does this new exhibition look like? We basically split up the room in 5 main areas for a regular tour. And the first one, and we'll also go roughly in order, as a guide would take you, is a large video wall to allow for an immersive sort of introduction to both the room, where the visitors are, what the Atlas experiment and the collaboration are about, what the physics goals are, what the achievements are, and why we do basic science at CERN and within the Atlas collaboration. So it's a bit more than 3-minute introduction that aims to put all the visitors on the same page in all these terms. Right, and then the guide can also, depending on the type of visit, show additional material on this video wall, from presentations to video clips to images. But a regular tour would, as the next step, go to what we call the detector area, and as a first thing, a detector screen, which is a large interactive display that the guide can use to introduce the Atlas detector and its main components, where they are, what their purpose are, how they sort of fit into the whole picture schematically, and show some pictures or short clips to sort of basically visualize how these components looks like and to introduce what they do and how they work. In the next area, it's the exhibits area, where you have some real detector components, some prototypes exhibited in 2 display cases in the wall and 1 in the floor beneath the visitors. They range from very small semiconductor tracker components to large calorimeter towers, parts of that. Right, and give a nice sense of what it is, how the Atlas experiment looks like and what it's built from. It also has interactive transparent touchscreens that the guide can use to visualize where the individual components sit within this huge experiment, and roughly how the individual components works, and some statistic around these example exhibits. As a third part of the detector area, there's also the My Atlas Lego model, that again a guide can use to nicely illustrate both the sheer size of this huge experiment and the complexity of the Atlas experiment, because the model is roughly in scale to the figurine. Underneath the Lego model, there's also some hidden drawers where we will provide sort of mock-up detector elements and some other sort of real detector exhibits that a guide can, depending on the tour, on the group, hand out. And there's also sort of haptic components that, for example, if we have a tour with visually impaired visitors, then you can get sort of a haptic feeling of some of the components, giving you an idea of the size of individual parts and so forth. As next part, and this is also for a regular tour, essentially sort of the final moment, we go to the control room area, where the guide can sort of create a bit of a wow effect by turning the previously opaque windows towards the control room transparent in an instant. And then giving sort of giving free the view of the control room and the work of the shifters when the LHC is providing data. There's also 4 interactive screens that the guide and also the visitors can use to explore some of the displays that the shifters in the control room are using to basically run the experiment. And there's some context information to better understand what it takes to be a shifter, what you do as a shifter, and what it takes to run the experiment. So that's the main sort of components of a regular tour. There's a few more gimmicks, you could say, in the visitor center on the tour that range from an events or collision counter at the top, giving the visitors an impression of the rate at which we take collisions and record collisions in the Atlas experiment and in the LHC in general. It also displays some general status information of the experiment and the Large Hadron Collider, the collider essentially. There's also what we call Periscope that gives people an idea and an impression of the fact that they are actually almost on top of the experiment. So 100 meters below, if you look down there, sort of it's a virtual display giving you that feeling that you're just above the experiment in the visitor center where you are as a visitor. And there's also the Selfie Wall, which visitors can use to sort of create their own long-lasting memory of their visit to the Atlas experiment and to CERN. And last but not least, this Selfie Wall also serves as a separator, enabling us to separating out a dedicated corner for our very successful Atlas virtual visit program, so that once we can't do the virtual visits from underground anymore when the LHC is running, we can go back to the visitor center and also give virtual visits the chance to have a look at the control room and allowing us to essentially do both real visits on site and virtual visits in parallel with this sort of separated out corner. So it's been a great pleasure for me to manage this project, to bring the new Atlas Visitor Center to life. I hope you also enjoyed this little video and the poster. Make sure to either visit us on a virtual visit or, once possible again, on site at CERN Point 1 in the Atlas Visitor Center.